Hello, Mrs. Thomas here, and we're continuing on our reading of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and we're on chapter 21, which is Goodbye Violet, and we're on part 2. And if you remember, we got up to the part where something is happening to Violet's nose. "Well, be quiet, Mother, and let me finish," said Violet. "It's turning blue," screamed Mrs. Beauregard. "Your nose is turning as blue as a blueberry." "Your mother is right," shouted Mr. Beauregard. "Your whole nose has gone purple." "What do you mean?" said Violet, still chewing away. "Your cheeks," screamed Mrs. Beauregard. "They're turning blue as well. So is your chin. Your whole face is turning blue." "Spit that gum out at once," ordered Mr. Beauregard. "Mercy, save us," yelled Mrs. Beauregard. "The girl's going blue and purple all over. Even her hair is changing colour. Violet, you're turning violet. Violet, what is happening to you?" "I told you I hadn't got it quite right," sighed Mr. Wonka, shaking his head sadly. "I'll say you haven't," cried Mrs. Beauregard. "Just look at the girl now." Everybody was staring at Violet, and what a terrible, peculiar sight she was. Her face and hands and legs and neck, in fact the skin all over her body, as well as her great big mop of curly hair, had turned a brilliant purplish blue, the colour of blueberry juice. "It always goes wrong when we get to the dessert," sighed Mr. Wonka. "It's the blueberry pie that does it. But I'll get it right one day. You wait and see." "Violet!" screamed Mrs. Beauregard. "You're swelling up." "I feel sick," Violet said. "You're swelling up!" screamed Mrs. Beauregard again. "I feel most peculiar," gasped Violet. "I'm not surprised," said Mr. Beauregard. "Great heavens, girls!" shrieked Mrs. Beauregard. "You're blowing up like a balloon." "Like a blueberry," said Mr. Wonka. "Call a doctor!" shouted Mr. Beauregard. "Prick her with a pin," said one of the other fathers. "Save her!" cried Mrs. Beauregard, wringing her hands. But there was no saving her now. Her body was swelling up and changing at such a rate that within a minute it had turned into nothing less than an enormous round blue ball. A gigantic blueberry, in fact. And all that remained of Violet Beauregard herself was a tiny pair of legs and a tiny pair of arms sticking out of the great round fruit, and a little head on top. "It always happens like that," said Mr. Wonka. "I've tried it 20 times in the testing room on 20 Oompa Loompas, and every one of them finished up as a blueberry. It's most annoying. I just can't understand it." "But I don't want a blueberry for a daughter," yelled Mrs. Beauregard. "Put her back to what she was this instant." Mr. Wonka clicked his fingers, and 10 Oompa Loompas appeared immediately at his side. "Roll Mrs. Beauregard into the boat," he said to them, "and take her along to the juicing room at once." "The juicing room!" cried Mrs. Beauregard. "What are they going to do to her there?" "Squeeze her," said Mr. Wonka. "They've got to squeeze the juice out of her immediately. After that, we'll just have to see how she comes out. But don't worry, my dear Miss Beauregard. We'll get her repaired if it's the last thing we do. I'm sorry about it all. I really am." Already the 10 Oompa Loompas were rolling the enormous blueberry across the floor of the inventing room towards the door that led to the chocolate river where the boat was waiting. Mr. and Mrs. Beauregard hurried after them. The rest of the party, including little Charlie Bucket and Grandpa Joe, stood absolutely still and watched them go. "Listen," whispered Charlie. "Listen, Grandpa. The Oompa Loompas are in the boat outside are starting to sing." The voices, 100 of them, singing together, came loud and clear into the room. "Dear friends, we surely all agree there's almost nothing worse to see than some repulsive little bum who's always chewing gum. It's very near as bad as those who sit around and pick the nose. So please believe us when we say that chewing gum will never pay. This sticky habit's bound to send the chewer to a sticky end. Did any of you ever know a person called Miss Bigelow? This dreadful woman saw no wrong in chewing all day long. She chewed while bathing in the tub. She chewed while dancing at her club. She chewed in church and on the bus. It really was quite ludicrous. And when she couldn't find her gum, she'd chew up at the linoleum, or anything that happened near a pair of boots, the postman's ear, or people's underclothes. And once she chewed her boyfriend's nose. She went on chewing till at last her chewing muscles grew so vast that from her face her giant chin stuck out just like a violin. For years and years she chewed away, consuming 50 bits a day, until one summer eve, alas, a horrid business came to pass. Miss Bigelow went late to bed. For half an hour she lay and read, chewing and chewing all the while like some great clockwork crocodile. At last she put her gum away upon a special little tray, and settled back and went to sleep. She managed this by counting sheep. By now, how strange, although she slept, those massive jaws of hers still kept on chewing through the night, even with nothing there to bite. They were, you see, in such a groove they positively had to move, and very grim it was to hear, in pitchy darkness loud and clear, this sleeping woman's great big trap, opening and shutting, snap, 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 faster and faster, chop, chop, chop. The noise went on, it wouldn't stop, until at last her jaws decided to pause and open extra wide, and with the most tremendous chew they bit the lady's tongue in two. Thereafter, just from chewing gum, Miss Bigelow was always dumb. She spent her life shut up in some disgusting sanatorium. And that is why we'll try so hard to save Miss Violet Beauregard from suffering an equal fate. She is still quite young, it's not too late. Provided she survives the cure. We hope she does, we can't be sure.